Hello and welcome. In this video I'm going to show you the order of construction for this blouse. This is of course part of our summer draft and sew along where we're drafting two vintage styles together, this tunic and also a vintage blouse. The vintage blouse is now complete, so I have mine, and of course you can also draft and sew your own. If you haven't, have a look in the playlist. I included all the videos for it. Today I'm going to show you step by step how to stitch this. I'm using French seams because I'm using a see-through fabric. However, you can use whatever seams work best for yours. And if you haven't got a see-through fabric, of course you could just overlock it and do normal seams, which are faster. What is wonderful about this construction is that it's 90% straight seams, so it's really straightforward and beginner friendly. And I'm going to quickly show you a summary of the steps we're going through to make this blouse on the actual blouse, and then I actually show it to you step by step, and we'll also be doing some French seams and things like that. So the first thing you need to do on your blouse is stitch your shoulder seams together. The next step is to finish your neckline design. So whether you're using a button stand, a shawl collar, a facing, a stand collar, you put it in at that point because you can work on the flat and you can finish it really easily. I haven't actually finished mine yet because I'm not quite sure what to do, but you would do it at this step. Then we're going to move to our side and sleeves, and we're going to construct it completely separately. So the first thing we're going to do in our side panel is put our gusset to one side of our side panel and then the second side of the side panel. At the same time, you can also choose whatever finishing technique you want to use for your slits. I'm using a slightly unusual one because I'm doing a French seam, so that's what works for me. But you could use a facing, a binding, the classic keyhole method, whatever you'd like to do. Once you constructed the side panel, we are then going to attach the sleeve to our side panels. So again, we're going to do one side because we've got a gusset, and then we're going to stitch the sleeve together at the same time, catch the other side of our side panel. So you basically end up with a separate sleeve and side panel. And then the great thing is we can join our bodice and our side panel in one long straight seam, which gives you a really neat finish to your blouse. So no having to insert your sleeve and having to match corners or anything. It's literally one straight seam, which finishes it off beautifully. And after that, all you need to do is add your hem and cuff finishes. So that's the overview, and that might be enough for you to already finish it. But if you want a little bit of more in-depth step-by-step order of construction guide to this tunic, we're going to do that now. And what I've just showed you is the sort of order of construction I include on every tutorial on the pattern cutting school. So any drafting video always has a quick overview on how it comes together. So if you've already done some sewing patterns, you know how to do it. But for some more complicated styles, I also have included really in-depth sewing step-by-step order of construction styles. So if you love both drafting and sewing, do have a look in the description how you can learn with me on my pattern cutting school. And now let's dive into how to construct this tunic. The first thing you need to do is stitch your front and back bodice together at the shoulder. So you cut both of them out on the fold and then you lay them together and stitch them. I have already done that, so I will show it to you now. So I've stitched my front and back together on the shoulder. I've used a flat fell seam, so I've stitched it together with one side having a 0.7 centimeter seam allowance and the other one a 1.5 centimeters roughly, and then you basically fold over one side of your seam allowance over the other. As you can see here, it's actually folded over, and then we stitch it. So for inside you got the seam allowance folded over, so it's really secure and flat and nice. And when I went outside, we just got a row of parallel top stitching to our original seam. And you can see it gives you a really nice sort of solid, especially this is a see-through fabric, that just gives you a nice narrow channel where your shoulder is. On my top, I'm not quite sure yet what neckline I want to do, but this is the step after you put your shoulders together where you put your neckline in. So you can just lay it flat, and you can see I haven't even cut up my back and front neckline, because I might do a shawl collar. You can see as I was cutting out, I was sketching, so I might do something like this, like a flat folded over collar, or I might do a facing, or I might do the original one, but I don't want to rush it because that is the big focal point. I've also added a little bit of a pleat at the front, so when I construct it, whatever method I want, I will have a pleat. So whether it's a sort of shawl collar with a tap, I have a pleat underneath, or if it's a button stand, again, I want to have a pleat underneath. But you can see at this point, you can easily finish your neckline. So if you want to put in a button stand, you can easily insert that tap now. If you have a pleat or add a pleat like me, it's even easier because it will give you lots of room to put in the tap for your button stand. Or of course, at this point, you can insert a stand collar. You could actually have a facing, but you want to do it right at the beginning when everything is flat, because that's beautifully to work on later on. If you finish constructing the shirt first, it's going to be more complicated. So that's the first step. Now we're going to move on to our side panels, which is the side bodice and also our gusset. And the gusset size is up to you. It's a square. If you want to have the same one as me, you make it 8 centimeters square plus seam allowance. But of course, that is partly up to how you want it. The first thing we need to do is stitch your gusset to the side panel on one side, and I have already done that. So it will look like this. I've done it with a French seam. So if I hold it up like this, it's got a really nicely encased French seam, which again is narrow and will really protect the fabric as well. And the important thing is, if you're doing a French seam, you only do it to your stitching line, because what we're going to do next is join our gusset and side strip to the other side strip. So you go like this, you line up the other side, and then can you see how the gusset starts? I pull that up, and then I can stitch my other side in one straight seam to the gusset and my side seams. So that's really straightforward. If you want to have a slit at the bottom, you have to decide how you want to finish it. The next step is to put together the side panel we just constructed with our sleeve. So again, as before, we're going to attach the gusset and the top of one side panel to one side of our sleeve, and then the other side. So I've got my sleeve here. And I've got a folded over edge because it was a remnant. So that was finished already. So the next step is to create our separate sleeve and side panel part. So we turn our sleeve over like this, and then of course what it's going to end up looking like is this. So as you can see, that is the side panel of our blouse, and then of course that gets attached to our bodice like this later on. So you can see how it's all coming together. So the next step we need to do is stitch these together. And now this is a little bit 3D because of course we need to attach one side of a sleeve to one side of a gusset and the other one to the other side of a gusset. So we're going to do that first. Again, I'm using French seams, it's up to you. So if you're using a normal seam, put your right sides together and stitch it to the stitch lines. So we start at the bodice as usual, but then you can stitch right to the edge on that one. But then where the gusset is, I'm going to pin basically where my stitch line is, which is of course this point I've drawn on the section. So I've pinned it there and I'm only going to stitch to that. What we now do, of course, if we fold the sleeve in half again, we can now in one big seam stitch our underarm together and then also our gusset to the other half. So you can see this is my seam all done. So you can actually see my side panel is now taking on shape. And top stitch quite easily along here, or even just fold it over and stitch it later, even when it works. I'm going to do it later because that way you don't have to watch me stitch anymore. So I'm just going to basically open it up like this and then just stitch this all down, and I just have to make sure where the gusset is, I move it all out of the way so it doesn't stitch it in. So that's really straightforward. We're now going to do one last French seam, but because we've done all this prep, we can just lay them all together. So this is my right side, and of course, because this is like one of those weird styles, the front and back is identical, which is why this only works as a loose style. It doesn't work as a fitted style. You don't have to worry about cutting out the wrong side or something because it's all identical. What we can now do is stitch it all together. So the last thing you need to do is just stitch everything in one long line. And I'm doing French seams, but this you could also do this in the flat felt seam, which would be faster, and it could give you the same effect if you then turned it over and made it flat felt. And that's it. Do the same on your other side and you have your finished blouse. All you need to do is add your cuff and hem finishes. I'll be back on the 5th of September for the final video in our summer draft and sew along, and I would of course love to share any versions of this tunic and the blouse you have made. So if you want me to include some pictures or videos of it, tag me on Instagram, send me an email, or let me know in the comments below, and I would love to show off all the beautiful things you've made and also show people how many different versions you can do from the same sewing pattern we all created together. So do join me for that, or leave me any questions and comments below. As always, I love to hear from you, and for now, thank you so much for watching.